Tiny feathers in the morning light, fluttering softly, taking flight. Buzzing hums in the meadow's breeze, a symphony among the trees. Little wings of wonder in the air, dancing freely without a care. From the skies to the forest floor, nature's beauty forevermore.
This is Little Wings of Wonder, Inside the Fascinating World of Hummingbirds by Bradley Barkhurst, narrated by Roy Bunales. Chapter 3, The Great Migration Journey. The Epic Odyssey of North America's Smallest Travelers. Twice each year, an extraordinary phenomenon unfolds across North America as millions of hummingbirds embark on journeys that defy comprehension. These creatures, weighing less than a nickel, traverse thousands of miles between their breeding and wintering grounds, navigating by instinct across vast landscapes, open water, and hostile weather. The hummingbird migration represents one of nature's most remarkable achievements, a testament to the power of evolution to produce solutions that seem to challenge the very laws of physics. The scale of these journeys becomes even more astounding when considered in human terms. If we scaled a ruby-throated hummingbird's trans-Gulf migration to human proportions, it would be equivalent to a person swimming non-stop across the Atlantic Ocean. Yet, these tiny birds accomplish this feat twice annually, driven by ancient genetic programming that has guided their species for millions of years. Recent advances in tracking technology and citizen science programs have revolutionized our understanding of hummingbird migration. GPS transmitters small enough for hummingbirds, radar studies, and thousands of dedicated volunteers are revealing migration patterns of unprecedented complexity and precision. The 2025 migration season has provided particularly rich data as coordinated tracking efforts across North America paint an increasingly detailed picture of these remarkable journeys. The physiology of endurance. Before examining specific migration routes and timing, it's essential to understand the physiological preparations that make these journeys possible. In the weeks leading up to migration, hummingbirds undergo a transformation as dramatic as any in the animal kingdom. Their normal body weight of 3 to 4 grams can nearly double as they accumulate fat reserves that will fuel their epic flights. This pre-migration weight gain is precisely calibrated to their upcoming journey. Ruby-throated hummingbirds preparing for the trans-Gulf crossing typically increase their body weight by 4,050%, while species making shorter overland journeys may gain only 25 to 30% additional weight. This fat loading represents one of the most efficient energy storage systems in nature, providing the caloric density necessary for sustained flight over enormous distances.
Greeting Little Wings of Wonders, I'm Bradley Barkhurst, creator of Little Wings of Wonder. Thanks for joining me today. I want people to know that Little Wings of Wonder is not just a YouTube series, but a series of books as well. You can purchase the books at major retailers such as Barnes & Noble and Amazon. We have a whole series, Little Wings of Wonder, the book on hummingbirds, Inside the Fascinating World of Hummingbirds. We also have one called Little Wings of Wonder, Butterfly Magic from Caterpillar to Garden. And also, for those of you who wish to purchase gifts for the holiday, we have a new one called Little Wings of Wonder, Holiday Birds, a festive guide to winter's feathered friends. So I hope you enjoyed the series, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you.
The metabolic demands of migration flight push hummingbird physiology to its absolute limits. During active migration, their heart rate can exceed 1,200 beats per minute, while maintaining wing beat frequencies of 50 to 80 beats per second. Their respiratory system processes oxygen at rates that would overwhelm most vertebrates, while their cardiovascular system delivers nutrients and removes waste products with extraordinary efficiency. Temperature regulation during migration presents unique challenges. Flying at altitude exposes birds to cold temperatures, while intense muscular activity generates tremendous heat. Hummingbirds have evolved sophisticated thermoregulatory mechanisms that allow them to maintain optimal body temperature across a wide range of environmental conditions, from the heat of a Texas summer to the chill of a Canadian spring morning. Spring migration. The northward journey. The spring migration begins in late January and early February in the tropical wintering grounds of Central America and Mexico. Unlike the southward fall migration, which can extend over several months, spring migration is compressed into a relatively brief window driven by the urgent need to establish territories and begin breeding. The Gulf Coast Vanguard. The first wave of northbound migrants arrives along the Gulf Coast in late February and early March. Texas and Louisiana serve as the primary landfall for birds crossing the Gulf of Mexico, though significant numbers also follow overland routes through Mexico and Texas. These early arrivals are predominantly adult males, whose priority is securing the best available territories before competitors arrive. The timing of these early arrivals has shown remarkable consistency over decades of observation, despite year-to-year variations in weather patterns. This consistency suggests that departure timing from wintering grounds is controlled more by internal biological clocks than by environmental cues, though birds certainly adjust their routes and flight timing based on immediate weather conditions. Recent tracking data from 2025 has revealed that some ruby-throated hummingbirds begin their trans-Gulf crossing as early as mid-February, taking advantage of favorable weather systems to make the journey when energy demands are minimized. These birds often stage for several days along the northern Yucatan Peninsula, building fat reserves and waiting for optimal wind conditions. The continental progression. From the Gulf Coast staging areas, spring migration spreads northward like a slow-moving green wave. The progression follows predictable patterns tied to the advancing spring phenology, the timing of flower blooms and insect emergence that provide essential food resources for traveling birds. In Texas and Louisiana, peak spring activity typically occurs from mid-March through early April. Oklahoma and Arkansas see their first arrivals in mid to late March, with peak numbers in early to mid-April. The Ohio Valley and Southern Great Lakes region typically experience first arrivals in mid-April, with peak migration occurring in early May. The northern tier of hummingbird breeding range, including southern Canada, northern Minnesota, and northern Maine, doesn't see substantial numbers until late April or early May. These late-arriving populations often include birds that have already completed successful breeding attempts further south, demonstrating the remarkable flexibility in hummingbird life history strategies. Western migration corridors. While much attention focuses on the dramatic trans-Gulf migration of ruby-throated hummingbirds, Western species follow equally remarkable routes adapted to the mountainous terrain and scattered water sources of the American West. The spring migration of Western species often follows river valleys and mountain corridors that provide reliable food sources and favorable microclimates. Rufous hummingbirds begin their northward journey in January and February, following the Pacific coast before dispersing into interior breeding areas. Their route takes advantage of early blooming coastal plants and riparian vegetation along major river systems. By March, the first Rufous Hummingbirds reach Oregon and Washington, with the vanguard continuing into British Columbia and Alaska by April. Anna's hummingbirds present a different pattern entirely, as many populations are non-migratory residents that begin breeding activities while other species are still in tropical wintering grounds. However, some northern populations do migrate seasonally, and their movements are closely tied to the availability of nectar sources and the timing of territorial establishment. Black-chinned hummingbirds follow a more dispersed pattern, with birds moving north through multiple corridors from Mexico into the southwestern United States. Their migration timing varies considerably with elevation and latitude, with desert populations arriving earlier than mountain breeding birds. Fall migration. The southward journey. Fall migration presents a fundamentally different challenge than spring migration. While spring migrants are driven by the urgent need to establish territories and breed, fall migrants have the luxury of time but face the challenge of preparing inexperienced young birds for their first long-distance journey. The extended timeline. Fall migration begins remarkably early, with some adult males departing breeding territories as early as late June. These early migrants are typically birds that failed in their breeding attempts or completed successful nests early in the season. The extended timing of fall migration reflects the variable breeding success and molt schedules of different individuals within populations. Peak fall migration activity occurs from mid-August through September, though significant movement continues into October and even November in some regions. This extended timeline allows birds to take advantage of late-season flower blooms and insect hatches while avoiding the harsh weather that characterizes winter across much of North America. The challenge of inexperience. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of fall migration is that young birds making their first journey receive no guidance from adults. These birds, hatched just months earlier, must navigate thousands of miles using only genetic programming and their own developing skills. The mortality rate among first-year migrants is substantial, yet enough succeed to maintain stable populations. Recent research has revealed sophisticated navigation capabilities in young hummingbirds that were previously unknown. Magnetic compass orientation, stellar navigation, and landscape recognition all play roles in guiding these inexperienced travelers to wintering grounds they have never seen. Regional patterns and timing. The Great Lakes region typically sees peak fall migration from late August through mid-September. During this period, ruby-throated hummingbirds concentrate along shorelines and in areas with abundant late-season flowers, building fat reserves for their upcoming journeys. The Ohio Valley and Tennessee Valley serve as major migration corridors for ruby-throated hummingbirds, with peak activity occurring from early September through early October. These regions provide crucial stopover habitat, including native plants that bloom specifically during peak migration periods. Gulf Coast regions experience extended fall migration periods, with early arrivals in August and continue passage through October. Many birds stage for extended periods along the coast, taking advantage of abundant food resources to maximize their fat reserves before crossing the Gulf. Extreme journeys. Record-setting migrations. Some hummingbird migrations rank among the most extreme journeys in the animal kingdom. The Rufous Hummingbirds' round-trip migration from Alaska to Mexico covers nearly 8,000 miles, longer than many songbird species twice their size. When scaled to body size, this journey represents one of the longest migrations of any vertebrate. The nonstop Gulf crossing undertaken by ruby-throated hummingbirds covers 500 to 600 miles of open water with no opportunity to rest or refuel. Weather conditions can extend this journey considerably, with some birds likely flying for 18 to 20 hours continuously. The physiological demands of such sustained flight approach the theoretical limits of what a warm-blooded vertebrate can accomplish. High-altitude migrations present additional challenges. Some western hummingbirds regularly cross mountain passes above 10,000 feet elevation, where oxygen levels are substantially reduced and temperatures can drop below freezing even in summer. Broad-tailed hummingbirds breeding in the Colorado Rockies must navigate through some of the most challenging terrain in North America. Technological advances in migration research. The 2025 migration season has benefited from unprecedented technological advances that are revolutionizing our understanding of hummingbird movements. Miniaturized GPS transmitters now weigh less than 0.6 grams, allowing researchers to track individual birds throughout their entire migration cycles. Radar ornithology has revealed previously unknown aspects of hummingbird migration, including flight altitudes, speeds, and responses to weather systems. Doppler weather radar can detect hummingbird migrations over broad areas, providing insights into the timing and intensity of movements that would be impossible to gather through ground-based observations alone. Stable isotope analysis of feathers allows researchers to determine the geographic origins of migrating birds, revealing connectivity between breeding and wintering areas. This technique has uncovered surprising migration patterns, including the discovery that some eastern breeding birds winter much farther west than previously believed. Genetic analysis is revealing the evolutionary history of migration routes and the genetic basis of navigation abilities. Comparisons between migratory and non-migratory populations are providing insights into how migration behaviors evolve and how they might respond to environmental changes. Citizen science and community involvement. Perhaps no aspect of hummingbird research has benefited more from citizen involvement than migration studies. Thousands of dedicated volunteers across North America contribute migration observations through programs like Journey North, eBird, and specialized hummingbird monitoring networks. The Hummingbird Monitoring Network coordinates volunteers across the continent to track migration timing and abundance. Participants conduct standardized counts at established monitoring sites, providing data that spans multiple decades and allows researchers to detect long-term trends in migration timing and abundance. Migration mapping projects rely heavily on reports from backyard bird watchers who record first arrival dates, peak abundance periods, and last departure dates. These observations, when aggregated across thousands of sites, create detailed maps of migration progression that are updated in real time during peak migration periods. Banding programs provide crucial data on individual bird movements and survival rates. Volunteer banders working under scientific permits capture and band thousands of hummingbirds annually, with subsequent recaptures and recoveries providing detailed information about migration routes, timing, and site fidelity. Photography projects document plumage variations and help refine identification criteria for challenging species and age classes. Digital photography has made it possible for citizen scientists to contribute high-quality documentation that aids in research and education efforts. Climate change and migration timing. One of the most significant findings from recent migration research concerns the impacts of climate change on migration timing and success. Long-term datasets spanning several decades reveal shifts in migration timing that correlate with changing climate patterns. Spring migration is advancing in many regions, with first arrival dates occurring 1 to 2 weeks earlier than they did 30 to 40 years ago. This advancement appears to track changes in spring phenology, as earlier snowmelt and warmer temperatures cause flowers to bloom sooner than in the past. However, the relationship between climate change and migration timing is complex and varies among species and regions. Some populations show strong responses to changing conditions, while others maintain traditional timing despite environmental changes. The mismatches between migration timing and peak flower blooms are becoming increasingly common, potentially affecting breeding success and survival rates. Range shifts are another consequence of changing climate patterns. Some species are expanding their breeding ranges northward, while others are contracting from the southern portions of their ranges. Anna's hummingbird has shown one of the most dramatic range expansions, now breeding regularly in areas where it was historically absent. Navigation mysteries and mechanisms. Despite decades of research, many aspects of hummingbird navigation remain mysterious. How do these tiny birds maintain precise bearings during 1,000-mile journeys? How do young birds find wintering grounds they have never visited? How do migrants compensate for wind drift during long overwater flights? Magnetic compass orientation appears to play a central role in hummingbird navigation. Laboratory studies have demonstrated that hummingbirds can detect magnetic fields and use them for directional orientation. However, magnetic compass systems alone cannot explain the precision of hummingbird navigation, suggesting that multiple systems work together. Celestial navigation using sun compass and stellar patterns likely provides additional guidance, particularly during long-distance flights over featureless terrain or water. Polarized light patterns, which are invisible to human eyes but detectable by many bird species, may provide additional navigational cues. Landmark recognition and landscape-scale navigation become important during the final phases of migration, as birds seek specific territories or stopover sites. Some evidence suggests that hummingbirds learn landscape features during their first migration and use this knowledge in subsequent years. Conservation implications of migration research. Understanding migration patterns and requirements is crucial for hummingbird conservation. Many species depend on stopover sites that provide food and shelter during migration, and the loss or degradation of these sites can affect entire populations. Habitat connectivity has emerged as a critical conservation concept. Migration corridors that provide suitable habitat at regular intervals allow birds to complete their journeys successfully. Conversely, gaps in suitable habitat can create barriers that prevent successful migration. International cooperation is essential for hummingbird conservation, as many species cross multiple national boundaries during their migrations. Conservation efforts must consider the full annual cycle, protecting not only breeding and wintering areas, but also the migration routes that connect them. Climate change adaptation will require flexible conservation strategies that can accommodate shifting migration timing and changing habitat requirements. Protected areas and conservation programs must be designed to function effectively under changing environmental conditions. The future of migration research. Emerging technologies promise to reveal even more details about hummingbird migration in the coming years. Smaller tracking devices will allow researchers to study species that are currently too small to carry transmitters. Improved battery life and data storage capacity will enable year-round tracking of complete migration cycles. Artificial intelligence and machine learning are beginning to play roles in analyzing the vast data sets generated by modern tracking technologies. These tools can identify patterns in movement data that would be impossible for human researchers to detect, potentially revealing new insights into navigation mechanisms and habitat requirements. Genomic research is advancing our understanding of the genetic basis of migration behaviors. Comparisons between migratory and non-migratory populations are identifying the genes that control migration timing, navigation abilities, and physiological adaptations for long-distance flight. Collaborative research networks are expanding globally, creating opportunities for comparative studies across species and regions. International partnerships are particularly important for species that migrate across multiple countries, requiring coordinated research efforts to understand their complete life cycles. Witnessing the wonder. For those fortunate enough to witness hummingbird migration firsthand, the experience creates lasting connections to these remarkable creatures and their epic journeys. The concentration of migrants along major flyways during peak migration periods offers opportunities to observe dozens or even hundreds of birds in a single location. Gulf Coast hotspots during fall migration can host extraordinary concentrations of ruby-throated hummingbirds, with some locations recording more than 200 birds simultaneously. These spectacles provide insights into the scale of migration and the challenges facing these tiny travelers. Mountain passes in the western United States offer opportunities to witness the migrations of multiple species simultaneously. The sight of rufous, calliope, and broad-tailed hummingbirds moving through high-elevation corridors provides a perspective on migration that few people ever experience. Understanding migration timing and routes enhances these viewing opportunities and deepens appreciation for the remarkable journeys these birds undertake. Each migrating hummingbird carries within its tiny body the accumulated wisdom of millions of years of evolution, programmed with the knowledge necessary to navigate across continents with precision that rivals the most sophisticated human technologies. The great migration journey of North American hummingbirds represents one of nature's most extraordinary phenomena. As we continue to unravel the mysteries of these epic journeys through advancing research and citizen science contributions, we gain not only scientific knowledge, but also a deeper appreciation for the remarkable capabilities of these jewel-like birds and the urgent need to protect the landscapes and habitats that make their migrations possible.
If you liked what you heard today, consider purchasing other books by Bradley Barkhurst, including Underlying Love, A Worthington, Ohio Mystery. It's 1941 in the quaint village of Worthington, Ohio. Life is changing at the end of the Great Depression. Elizabeth Russo, 23, teaches elementary school but feels uncertain about her future. Her Sicilian immigrant father ran the Red and White, a popular village general store. 5 years prior, Elizabeth's high school sweetheart, Samuel, left the village abruptly, leaving her with unanswered questions. Now engaged to George, the Red and White's accountant, Elizabeth still can't forget Samuel. When her father tragically passes away, Elizabeth and her mother are forced to manage the store. Her mother's departure to care for a sick relative in Cincinnati leaves Elizabeth alone. Upon her return, she hears a scream and sees a figure fleeing. The village banker, Mr. Collins, is found murdered, with suspicion falling on a local hobo. Elizabeth and her quirky neighbor, Betty Wimsfeld, investigate the murder. As they uncover village secrets, Elizabeth struggles with her feelings for George and Samuel. Will Elizabeth solve the murder mystery? Will she choose her stable engagement or risk rekindling an old flame? Find out in Underlying Love, a Worthington, Ohio mystery. Available through Amazon and underlyinglove.com. Stay tuned for the next episode of Little Winged Wonders, the perfect hummingbird garden.